Deep beneath the ocean's surface, a silent predator lurks. Sharks, with their razor-sharp teeth and streamlined bodies, are perfectly evolved for hunting. But these magnificent creatures can also threaten humans, with some encounters turning deadly. Today, we'll explore the chilling stories of people who came face to face with the ocean's most feared predator. The Aegean Sea shimmered under a cloudless sky, reflecting the yacht serendipity opulence. Valentina Petrova, an icon on social media, lay sprawled on a plush sunbed, her toned body shimmering with expensive tanning oil. Growing up in a small Siberian village, moments like this were a distant dream. Modeling had yet to be her plan. It started as selfies shared with friends back home, and then talent scouts found her, propelling her to overnight fame. Her meticulously curated Instagram feed showcased a life of untouchable glamour. Private jets, designer clothes, and parties in the world's most exclusive locations. Her followers, numbering in the millions, hungered for each update, their comments and likes fueling her meteoric rise. This morning, July 14, 2012, she had filmed sponsored content by the Infinity Pool, laughing while showcasing swimwear sent by luxury brands, hoping for a moment on her feed. The work was never-ending, editing videos, choosing the perfect captions, and cultivating the illusion of effortless perfection. Dimitris Petropavlos, the Greek shipping magnate, was famous for his extravagant parties. This one was no exception. Tonight was her chance to elevate her status further, to be seen networking with socialites, fashion designers, and perhaps even a Hollywood star or two. Valentina smoothed her designer sunglasses over her eyes, feeling a flicker of nerves. The stakes were high. She changed into a dress that cost more than most people made in a year, the shimmering sequins glinting like fish scales. The crew members' faces displayed awe as she walked and barely concealed resentment. Valentina was used to it. The whispers she was just a pretty face, lucky to be here, not genuinely talented, only hardened her resolve to prove them wrong. Sapphire Bay was famed for its crystal-clear waters and abundant marine life. Valentina had been fascinated by documentaries showing graceful sharks patrolling ancient coral reefs. She never imagined her carefully posed photo shoots might lead to a real-life encounter with an apex predator. The edge of the yacht had always been Valentina's favorite spot for a photo capturing both the expanse of the sea and the luxurious surroundings. She teetered on the railing, holding her pose, unaware of the movement in the darkening water below. The setting sun had reduced visibility, and the usually clear water now held an ominous quality. There was the briefest flash of gray, a sleek shape moving slowly below the surface. The water around Valentina erupted in a fury of foam as the shark lunged, its massive jaws snapping open. Her piercing scream was lost as she tumbled overboard, her shimmering sequin dress a beacon in the darkening water. In the chaos, the shark thrashed. It circled her with predatory intent, its powerful tail sending waves washing over the yacht's edge. Valentina scrambled, the fabric of her dress snagging on remnants of the railing, hampering her movements. Time fractured on the deck of the yacht. Shrieks of horror rose from the guests as the crew fumbled desperately with life preservers and safety equipment. The shark attacked again. This time its teeth found purchase. Valentina felt a jolting pain in her leg. The warmth of her blood spread through the cool water, a crimson invitation that made the shark frenzy. It pulled, ripping a chunk of flesh away. Valentina's vision blurred as terror overwhelmed her. Instinctively, she thrashed her arms, a final desperate attempt at defense. Suddenly, the pressure from the shark's jaws lessened. It had caught a glimpse of the commotion on the yacht, shouting people, lights, and objects being flung into the water. For a moment, the shark hesitated, its instincts pulling it between the injured prey and the potential danger from the larger vessel. The delay was Valentina's salvation. A life preserver splashed near her, followed by a rope. Dimly, she heard shouts, names she didn't recognize calling to her. With a surge of adrenaline, she grabbed the rope and clung to it with all her remaining strength. Agonizingly, they hauled her upwards. Every movement felt like shards of glass raked through her shredded leg. Blood pumped from the gaping wounds, the once pristine water turning murky with red. She screamed, not from vanity, but from the sheer animalistic pain that ripped through her body. She felt like a rag doll, bones threatening to snap loose from their moorings, as her mangled form was pulled over the railing and onto the deck. The chaos intensified, a symphony of horrified shouts and sobs. Someone tore a shirt, pressing the rough fabric against her ruined leg. It was a futile attempt. The blood flowed too profusely. Panic clawed at her throat as her vision blurred. Faces swam above her, some familiar, others warped into grotesque masks of terror. From somewhere distant came the wail of a siren, a Coast Guard vessel summoned by the commotion. The sound was both a lifeline and a death knell. If they didn't reach her soon, the world narrowed to pain, the drone of the approaching boat, and a bone-deep chill creeping through her limbs. Her once perfect body was betraying her, shutting down. Later, in a sterile hospital room, the extent of her injuries would be made clear. Tendons, muscles, and even bones were irrevocably damaged. But at that moment, as the world faded to black, she knew only that the price of social media glamour could be paid in flesh and blood. The incident, a frantic battle for survival, had been captured live on her followers' feeds. News would spread globally. Her name splashed across headlines alongside images of the blood-stained water. The curated life she had built with such care had crumbled. In its place was a stark reality. The ocean could be as cruel as beautiful, and danger lurked behind the lens of fame. The relentless surge of the Indian Ocean could be felt even before the small dive boat broke the horizon. Maya Desai couldn't suppress a shiver of mixed excitement and apprehension. She was an experienced diver, but something about this trip felt different. Mossel Bay was known as a white shark hotspot, and today's dive was meant to bring them closer to these majestic predators than ever before. The plan was to explore the wreck of the Duchess, a cargo ship that sank decades ago, now a haven for marine life. Maya was here with her brother Ravi and two friends, Sarah, a marine biologist with an infectious enthusiasm, and Ben, a photographer hoping to capture the perfect shark image. They were an unlikely crew. Maya, a successful doctor craving adventure outside the hospital, Ravi, the cautious accountant, Sarah, the bubbly scientist, and Ben, always searching for the next adrenaline rush. Before the trip, their guide, Peter, had been unhappy as he briefed them on shark behavior and the recent illegal fishing activities in the area. These activities agitated the sharks, and there had been several tense encounters between sharks and divers in recent weeks. Still, the allure of seeing these apex predators in their natural habitat outweighed the potential risks. The morning of August 28, 2001, was spent on routine dives, exploring vibrant reefs teeming with colorful fish. Maya's anxiety eased with each breath she took underwater, yet the looming presence of the Duchess and its rumored inhabitants nagged at the back of her mind. After a rushed lunch on board, Peter signaled the main event. As they geared up, a sense of solemnity replaced the earlier excitement. Sarah double-checked their air tanks and reviewed the safety protocols, her voice unusually steady. The old shipwreck cast an imposing shadow in the murky depths. With a final nod, they descended into the ocean's embrace. The water felt colder, and the limited visibility added to unease. Maya instinctively kept closer to Ravi, his calm presence a comfort in this alien world. A flash of movement in the gloom made them all freeze. At least 4 meters long, a massive shark materialized from the shadows, silently circling the wreck. Peter raised his hand, a signal to stay calm and regroup. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs, and she found it hard to breathe steadily. The shark was magnificent, a creature of pure power. Yet its gaze seemed devoid of curiosity, instead holding a chilling focus. They edged along the wreck's hull, seeking the relative safety of its rusted interior. The shark paced them relentlessly, its passes growing closer with each circuit. Ravi clutched Maya's hand tightly, a silent plea for reassurance she could not give. Suddenly, panic erupted. Ben, separated from the group, had found an ideal angle to photograph the shark, just as a school of fish darted by. The movement triggered the predator. In a blur, the shark charged, snapping its massive jaws around one of Ben's legs. His muffled screams echoed through the water, churning bubbles to the surface. In the chaos, the group scattered. Sarah tried to distract the shark, waving her dive knife, a futile gesture against the creature's size and strength. Peter, cursing under his breath, pulled Ben toward a narrow crevice in the wreck. The shark thrashed, its teeth ripping Ben's dive suit. Blood clouded the water, further inciting its feeding frenzy. Maya found herself trapped on the outer side of the wreck, The shark, its attention now divided, seemed to consider her. She could almost feel its cold eyes measuring her, weighing its options. It nudged the wreck's decaying metal, testing the barrier between them. Terror gave her a jolt of energy. She propelled herself away from the ship, swimming upwards, ignoring the warning pings from her air gauge. The others spotted her break for the surface, scattering to follow. The shark hesitated, its attention finally drawn away from its trapped prey. Lungs burning, they surfaced in a chaotic cluster. Peter dragged a half-conscious Ben on board the dive boat, his leg a mangled mess. The salty air stung Maya's tears, a mixture of relief and anguish. Ben needed urgent medical attention. Sarah frantically radioed for a Coast Guard rescue, her voice cracking with distress. The trip back was a nightmare. Each wave brought the looming threat of a renewed attack. They huddled together, injuries tended with makeshift bandages, their eyes scanning the ocean for any sign of fins slicing through the water. Upon reaching shore, Ben was airlifted to the hospital. News crews descended like vultures, their cameras flashing, microphones thrust toward the shaken group. The once beautiful dive site was now a place of trauma, cordoned off with yellow tape. In the calm waiting room, the smell of antiseptic and the quiet beeping of monitors underscored the gravity of the situation. Maya knew their lives had changed irrevocably. Ben faced a long recovery, his mangled leg a testament to the power of the shark. His camera lay abandoned on the dive boat, now seeming like a childish toy in the face of such brutality. His dreams of underwater photography were likely shattered. Sarah was tormented with guilt, replaying every decision, wondering if she could have prevented the attack. Tears streamed silently down her face. Ravi held on to Maya tightly, his usually stoic expression replaced with a mask of fear. He silently vowed never to let her risk her life like this again, resentment simmering beneath the worry. Maya was uninjured, but the images were burned into her mind. The shark's predatory gaze, the once pristine water now a swirling crimson cloud, and Ben's cries muffled by the ocean. The thrill of adventure had curdled into a deep fear of the hidden dangers lurking in the ocean's depths. A shiver ran through her despite the warmth of the hospital room. She knew deep down she would never look at the sea the same way again. The air was crisp, and the sky was a clear canvas of blue on June 14, 2003, as the Peterson family's fishing boat chugged out of the harbor in Valdez Inlet, Alaska. Tom Peterson, a weathered fisherman with decades of experience, steered the modest vessel confidently. His weathered hands gripped the wheel, the sea salt staining his faded denim jacket. His wife, Anya, sat beside him, her smile as bright as the morning light. In the stern, their two children, 14-year-old Ethan and 10-year-old Lily, chattered excitedly, their fishing rods ready for the day's catch. This trip was a much-needed escape from the hustle of their restaurant business in Anchorage. The scent of frying fish and the clamor of hungry customers had faded, replaced by the tang of seawater and the boat's gentle rocking. Tom was a man of few words, but his deep love for his family shone through in these shared adventures on the open water. Once a spirited artist, Anya had shelved her dreams to support Tom's ambitions. Now, with the business running smoothly, she craved moments to reconnect with the wilder parts of herself. Her fingers itched for a sketchbook, yearning to capture the dancing reflections on the water or the stark silhouettes of seabirds against the sky. Ethan was a budding scientist, fascinated by the ocean's complex ecosystem, and his notebook was always at hand to sketch any interesting specimens they hauled in. His backpack bulged with field guides and a battered magnifying glass. Lily, a ball of boundless energy, loved the fishing as a contest, determined to catch the biggest fish of the day. Her eyes sparkled with mischief as she teased her brother about his boring scientific notes. Valdez Inlet was known for its salmon runs and stunning scenery, but it was also home to larger, less welcome predators. Pacific sleeper sharks, rarely seen but massive in size, roamed these cold waters. Tom had always preached caution, teaching his kids that the ocean was as unpredictable as beautiful. He'd shown them photos of the massive sharks, their jaws wide enough to swallow a person whole. Lily shuddered then, but the stories seemed like distant tales, not a real threat. The first few hours passed uneventfully. They pulled up several chunky cod and a hefty halibut. enough to keep Anya busy at the small filleting table. Ethan dutifully recorded their catches, his enthusiasm occasionally bubbling over into impromptu lectures on marine biology. Lily sulked, frustrated by her lack of exciting catches until her rod suddenly bent almost double. Excitement surged as the line strained. This was no ordinary fish. Tom and Anya were beside her instantly, helping to maintain tension while trying to gauge what lurked beneath the surface. Then with a massive surge, something huge breached the water. A monstrous gray form thrashed violently, snapping the fishing line. The Peterson family watched in stunned silence. Lily burst into tears, her fishing dreams dashed and replaced by dawning fear. This was no oversized salmon. It was a shark, one of the massive, rarely glimpsed sleepers. Panic surged through the Peterson family. The shark had not disappeared. It circled their tiny vessel, its dark eye assessing them with eerie intelligence. Tom cut the engine, hoping the lack of noise and vibration might lessen the shark's interest. The creature rammed the boat's hull, tremoring through the fiberglass. Lily screamed, clinging to her mother. Anya tried to soothe her, but her voice was trembling. His face was pale, and Ethan started jotting frantic notes in his journal, attempting to make sense of the situation. Tom grabbed a heavy boat hook, his only real weapon on board. The shark rammed the boat again, harder this time. A sickening crack split the air as the fiberglass started to give way beneath the relentless assault. Icy water seeped in, a chilling reminder of their vulnerability. Desperation fueled Tom's subsequent actions. He revved the engine, dashing a rocky outcropping he remembered seeing earlier. The shark followed, matching their speed in the water. Tom steered the boat into a narrow cove, gambling that the shallows would deter the massive predator. To his relief, the shark hesitated, circling the entrance to the cove but seeming unwilling to risk getting trapped in the shallow water. The boat was severely damaged. Water sloshed ominously around their feet, and the engine sputtered worryingly. Anya hastily grabbed life vests, handing them out with forced calm. Ethan bailed water with a bucket, his movements frantic. Lily whimpered, clutching a tattered stuffed penguin to her chest. Tom, ever practical, located a roll of duct tape and began mending the worst of the cracks, his actions a lifeline of hope amidst the chaos. Yet they all knew they weren't safe. The shark lingered just outside the cove, a sentinel blocking their escape. Sunset painted the sky in streaks of orange and red, the beauty contrasting with their dire predicament. Tom knew they couldn't stay here forever. As darkness fell, the temperature would plummet. Hypothermia became as much a threat as the lurking predator. They huddled close, drawing on each other for warmth and courage. Ethan whispered theories on shark behavior, his scientific mind seeking answers even in the face of overwhelming fear. Anya hummed a lullaby Lily loved as a child, her voice soothing the terrified little girl and maybe calming her own racing heart. Hours crept by. The cold bit into their bones and exhaustion threatened to overwhelm them. Just as Tom was about to decide to try and run for open water, a new sound split the night. It was the rhythmic chop of helicopter blades growing closer. A search and rescue mission, alerted by locals who had seen flares they'd set off in a last-ditch attempt hours before. As the helicopter descended, its searchlights a comforting beacon, and a wave of indescribable relief washed over them. But even as they were winched up into the warmth of the helicopter, they knew the fearsome power of the sea was something none of them would ever forget. The dark depths of Valdez Inlet held more than just fish, and the ocean would forever feel like a wilder, more dangerous place. Dr. Fiora Singh felt excitement and apprehension as the research vessel approached their dive site on Osprey Reef, part of Australia's Great Barrier Reef. It was August 22, 2005, and the water shimmered with an increasingly rare clarity. Fiora knew this wasn't a sign of health. Beneath the surface, a silent crisis was unfolding. Coral bleaching, a devastating consequence of warming oceans, ravaged the reef system. Fiora had dedicated her career to studying this phenomenon. Her heart ached to see the once vibrant coral colonies fading to ghostly white. Their data was crucial, but it felt like documenting a dying world. Her team was a motley crew. Dr. Agustin Evans, a veteran marine biologist, carried an aura of quiet competence. Clara, Fiora's research assistant, was fresh out of university. and her enthusiasm was a vibrant contrast to Fiora's growing sense of dread. Completing the team was Jake, the boat's captain, a weathered local with a deep respect for the reef and a healthy dose of skepticism about the scientists invading his waters. Osprey Reef was known for its shark populations. Usually, their dives included respectful encounters with these predators, crucial players in the reef ecosystem. However, recent research suggested that sharks were changing their behavior in response to the environmental crisis, growing more agitated in areas with severely bleached coral. That morning, Agustin had briefed them on the elevated risk. He stressed the importance of extra caution and reinforced safety protocols. Yet, as they geared up, Fiora sensed a nervous energy undercutting the usual pre-dive focus. Clara checked her equipment with trembling fingers while Jake muttered warnings that were more than just superstition. The water closed over their heads, swallowing them into a world transformed. Fiora had swum here dozens of times, but it felt like an alien landscape. The reef looked like a graveyard, the vibrant colors she remembered replaced with stark white skeletons. Fish darted aimlessly, their usual havens gone. They focused on their tasks, laying out transect lines, photographing and recording data. Fiora tried to push away the unease gnawing at her, the sense that they were being watched. This wasn't just scientific observation anymore. It felt like an intrusion, a desperate attempt to chronicle a disaster they were powerless to halt. Time melted away in the silent world. Agustin signaled for them to start ascending. As they neared the surface, Clara pointed excitedly at a school of fish gathering nearby. Fiora turned to follow her gaze, and her heart jolted. A massive tiger shark was materializing out of the gloom, far closer than any they had encountered on this trip. The shark moved with unnerving speed and purpose, cutting through the water toward Clara. Fiora screamed a muffled warning, her bubbles rising in a frantic stream. Clara, startled, whipped around to see the sleek gray form bearing down on her. Agustin reached out in a blur of primal fear, shoving Clara from the shark's path. The shark adjusted its trajectory, its jaws snapping just inches from his outstretched arm. Fiora saw a flash of red as something tore through the water. Time splintered into fragments. Agustin recoiled, his wetsuit ripped, a spreading crimson stain blooming around his injured leg. Pain flared across his face, but his focus remained on the circling predator. The shark, seemingly disoriented by the taste of blood, thrashed against the fragile coral structures, sending clouds of silt swirling around them. Fiora frantically signaled for Clara and Agustin to ascend, desperate to reach the boat's safety. They scrambled upwards, their panicked movements in stark contrast to the precise predatory grace of the shark. Reaching the boat, Fiora and Clara hauled a bleeding Agustin on board seconds before the shark lunged, its powerful body striking the hull with a sickening thud. Jake roared the engine to life, throwing the boat into reverse and away from the frenzied predator. Shock pulsed through them. Clara sobbed, pressing a makeshift bandage against Agustin's wound. He gritted his teeth, his breathing ragged. Fiora's mind raced, the clinical detachment of a scientist cracking under the pressure. They needed urgent medical attention. Yet the thought of returning to the water after what had just happened filled her with a cold terror. Jake stared at the water where the shark still lurked, his jaw set. He called the radio for help, knowing it would mean explaining the circumstances, the scientific mission, the disturbed environment, the attack. The Coast Guard response would be swift, likely accompanied by calls to abandon the reef, to prioritize human safety over research. The sun dipped towards the horizon, casting long shadows on the churning water as they waited. Rescue came in the form of a helicopter, its rotors drowning out the gentle lap of waves they'd found so peaceful mere hours before. Agustin was winched up, his face pale against the fading light. A sense of heavy uncertainty descended as they watched him disappear. In the hospital's sterile environment, Agustin would receive treatment back on the mainland. But the questions that haunted Fiora weren't about his physical recovery. It was about the future of their research, about the delicate balance of documenting the reef crisis, while acknowledging the heightened dangers it now held. The media descended, drawn by the dramatic tale of scientists attacked during their work. Fiora fended off questions about rogue sharks and sensationalized headlines that painted the ocean as a monstrous villain. Yet she knew there were uncomfortable truths beneath the surface. The reef was sending a desperate warning, and they were caught in the fallout, not just as researchers, but as humans intruding on an ecosystem pushed to the brink. The question that echoed in her mind as she walked the White Hospital corridors was far more complex than she'd ever anticipated. At what cost should science pursue its quest for knowledge? Baía Formosa, Brazil. It was a moonlit night on November 16, 2007, when Kai and Luna slipped hand in hand into the gentle waves that lapped at their secret cove. This hidden gem, tucked away on the Baía Formosa coastline, was their haven, found during one of Kai's early morning fishing trips, and still untouched by the bustling beach resorts further up the coast. Kai was a fisherman by trade. His days were spent battling the ocean's power. Nights like this were a sanctuary, a time to shed the rough image of his work and simply be a man in love. Luna, an artist from the vibrant streets of Sao Paulo, found unending inspiration in his quiet strength and the raw beauty of their surroundings. Their lives were a study in contrasts. Luna's world thrummed with music, color, and the city's relentless energy. Yet, with only the moon and stars for company, the pace slowed here. Her busy mind quieted, and her artist's soul soaked in the wild peacefulness of it all. The stress of a recent exhibit opening dissolved with each step they took into the warm embrace of the ocean. Kai, usually so serious, grinned as a wave soaked his shirt. Luna splashed him back with a mischievous giggle, unleashing a playful side he rarely displayed on land. The water deepened, the gentle coolness soothing after the day's heat. Luna had always loved the ocean and felt deeply connected to its vastness and mystery. She floated on her back, staring at the countless stars across the velvet night sky. A sense of awe washed over her. It was easy to feel small and insignificant out here, surrounded by such immensity. Kai treaded water nearby, a watchful presence. He knew the ocean better than anyone, the bounty it offered, and the hidden dangers it harbored. Brazil's coastline was home to numerous shark species drawn to the warm, food-rich waters. Encounters were rare, but he would never take chances with Luna's safety, especially after sundown. Something brushed against Luna's leg, making her jump. She laughed nervously while Kai, tense-faced, stood by her side. His eyes scanned the darkness warily. A moment later, a sleek shape surfaced near them. In the deceptive moonlight, it seemed playful, almost dolphin-like. Relief washed over Luna as a giggle escaped her lips. "See, there's nothing to worry about." She stretched out a hand as the creature circled closer, curious. But just as her fingers were about to graze its smooth skin, the shape twisted, revealing a flash of white underbelly and a gaping, tooth-filled maw. The shark was young, likely a bull shark drawn to the shallows of Baía Formosa by curiosity rather than outright hunger on this moonlit November 16th night. Yet even a juvenile shark posed a significant threat. Kai's fisherman instincts kicked in, yelling at Luna to retreat while his body moved reflexively between her and the predator. Panic surged through Luna. The playful dolphin illusion had shattered completely. This was a wild creature, and they were intruders in its domain. Kai thrashed in the water, trying to scare it off, but the shark seemed more intrigued than intimidated by his actions. It circled them, its movements disconcertingly agile in the moonlit water. Luna's heart hammered against her ribs. Her artist's eye, usually drawn to form and color, instead focused on the sharpness of the teeth, the cold gleam of the predator's eyes. Suddenly, the shark lunged at Kai, its jaws snapping shut just inches from his arm. He kicked out desperately, feeling a jolt of pain as one of the razor-sharp teeth grazed his leg. A flash of red bloomed in the water before being lost in the murky darkness. Luna screamed, a raw sound of terror. She scrambled toward the shore, her movements clumsy and frantic. The beach, which had seemed like a haven moments ago, now felt agonizingly distant. She could hear the shark behind her, its splashes a chilling soundtrack to her desperate flight. The sand was finally beneath her feet. She stumbled, falling to her knees, but forced herself to keep moving. Casting a fearful glance backward, she saw Kai reaching the shallows too, his movements slower, hampered by his injury. The shark hadn't given up, still circling menacingly just beyond the breaking waves. Exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, but Luna knew stopping now meant certain death. Gathering the last of her strength, she staggered onto the beach and collapsed, sobbing into the coarse sand. Kai joined her moments later, his breath ragged, blood staining the leg of his shorts. They clung to each other, the steady rhythm of their heartbeats the only sound daring to break the silence of the night. As the first rays of dawn painted the horizon, the exhausted couple knew they'd narrowly escaped a watery grave. The secluded cove in Baia Formosa would never hold the same carefree allure. The events of November 16, 2007, had imprinted a primal fear on their souls, a stark reminder that the ocean was as beautiful as it was merciless. The following day, their bodies trembled with a mix of fatigue and residual terror as they told their story to the local authorities. The tale of the nighttime shark encounter was met with a mix of concern and skepticism by the seasoned fishermen. Yet the wound on Kai's leg was impossible to deny. News of the close call spread through the coastal town quickly. The regulars at the small bar Kai frequented listened to his account with grim expressions, sharing their tales of close encounters beneath the surface. Luna, her artist spirit shaken but not entirely broken, found a strange sense of morbid fascination in these stories of the ocean's hidden power. The once secluded beach was marked with warning signs. Locals who had relied on the ocean for generations felt a twinge of unease when venturing into the waves, always conscious of the unseen dangers lurking just below the surface. Luna and Kai returned to their respective lives, forever changed by that night. Kai continued fishing, but with a newfound wariness, his eyes constantly scanning the depths. Luna returned to Sao Paulo, but the vibrant bustle of the city felt hollow after the raw terror she had faced. Her next exhibit was a stark departure from her usual style-dark, brooding canvases, depicting not the joyful energy of her beloved city, but the lurking shadows and hidden teeth of the vast, unknowable ocean. The rusting "No Trespassing" sign was another challenge for Allison Walsh and her crew on this sweltering summer day in Isla Verde, Mexico, June 25, 2009. Adrenaline and boredom fueled their reckless adventures in this sleepy coastal town. With her wild tangle of curls and a thirst for adventure, Allison was always the ringleader. Tom, the quiet mechanical genius, could hotwire a car and quickly build a zip line. Then there was Chelio, the skeptic of the group, his sarcastic comments masking the thrill that chased away the monotony of small-town life. Finally, Lily, Allison's younger sister, bounced with an energy that was both exhausting and contagious. Today's target was the old ecological park. Years ago, it had bustled with tourists eager to see its protected lagoon and resident wildlife. A devastating hurricane had ravaged the area, Isla Verde included, and the park never reopened. Rumors of abandoned research equipment and overgrown trails swirled, adding to its allure for the restless teens. The whispered legend of El Tiburon, a monstrous shark said to live in the murky lagoon, was just another part of the forbidden playground. Scaling the crumbling fence was child's play. The park felt like a post-apocalyptic jungle, nature reclaiming the crumbling structures and pathways. A faded brochure Allison snatched from a ruined kiosk boasted of stingray encounters and mangrove forests in their prime. They scoffed at organized tours, preferring the thrill of forging their path. The lagoon appeared suddenly through a tangle of vines. It was larger than Allison had imagined, its stillness broken only by the calls of unseen birds. She felt a familiar surge of excitement mixed with a prickle of unease. Tom, ever practical, located a rotting wooden rowboat, half sunken near the shore. Within an hour, they had it patched and surprisingly seaworthy. Paddling onto the lagoon on this sweltering June afternoon felt like crossing into another world. The water deepened to an inky green, reflecting the dense canopy above. Chelio joked nervously about El Tiburon lurking beneath, but his attempt to mask his fear only fueled Allison's bravado. She was determined to prove these were just silly stories meant to scare kids. Hours slipped by as they explored hidden inlets and raced their makeshift boat. Laughter bounced off the enclosing walls of the lagoon, a defiant echo in the forgotten park. As the sun descended, Allison ventured towards the lagoon's center, where the water looked impossibly deep. Curiosity battled with a rising sense of unease. Lily, her usual bubbly enthusiasm dampened, whimpered about going back. Then a massive shadow moved beneath their boat, rocking it violently. Allison's blood ran cold. This was no ordinary fish. A shiver ran through them as a colossal shark fin sliced through the water's surface, dwarfing their tiny vessel. Panic exploded within them as El Tiburon revealed its proper form. It wasn't just a legend. The shark was massive, the size of their tiny boat. Its scarred gray form circled with horrifying speed, bumping the boat, its beady eyes seeming to measure them. Chelio shrieked, his earlier bravado shattering. Tom fumbled with an oar, using it to poke feebly at the monstrous predator. Allison's mind raced, searching for any escape. The shark lunged, its jaws snapping open in a terrifying display of teeth. The boat overturned, dumping them into the murky water. Lily screamed, thrashing wildly. Allison choked, a rush of freezing water filling her lungs as she was pulled beneath the surface. For a terrifying moment, she saw the massive shape of the shark pass just inches from her legs. Frantically, she kicked upwards, breaking free into the fading daylight. Coughing and gasping, she saw Chelio clinging to the overturned boat and Tom pulling a sobbing Lily toward the shore. Allison swam desperately, every stroke fueled by raw terror. The lagoon wasn't just deep, it was deceptively wide. Reaching land felt like an impossible goal. Behind her, a splash and a shriek made her blood run cold. Chelio's thrashes had attracted the shark's attention. With sickening dread, she watched the giant predator drag him beneath the surface. A trail of crimson spread through the water, and Chelio's final scream was cut brutally short. Numb with horror, Allison kept her focus on the shoreline. Tom and Lily were closer now, but the shark seemed intent on her, cutting off her escape route. Despair threatened to overwhelm her as she realized she might not make it. Every tired stroke felt like her last. Suddenly, an engine roared to life. A small fishing boat appeared, and the commotion likely alerted a local fisherman. Seeing their terrified faces and the circling shark, he maneuvered his boat between Allison and the predator. Shouting in frantic Spanish, he gestured wildly for them to climb aboard. Allison, Tom, and Lily scrambled into the boat, their escape feeling like a miracle. As the fishermen sped them to safety, Allison turned to watch the lagoon fade into the distance. The mighty shark had once again retreated to its murky domain. The waters looked deceptively calm, hiding the terror they had just escaped. Reaching shore felt like stepping onto another planet. Allison sobbed, the weight of what they had just witnessed crushing her. Lily clung to Tom, her face ghostly pale. Local authorities were waiting, alerted by the fishermen, and their frantic words sparked a search. Despite their desperate insistence, no trace of Chelio was ever found. The legend of El Tiburon would forever be seared into the minds of Isla Verde's residents. The ecological park was permanently closed, the whispered tales of the monstrous shark morphing into a grim warning. Allison and her friends returned to their once carefree lives, forever changed. The thrill of adventure was tainted with the horror of that day. Haunted by nightmares and guilt, Allison never regained her rebellious spirit. In the quiet of the night, she could still hear Chelio's scream and the chilling splash that had signaled the end.